going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be covering the importance of feedback in being able to play Division One golf. If you're new to the channel, this is all we talk about is how to play Division One golf. What are the actual steps required? Not a bunch of fluff, not a bunch of squishy stuff where it's kind of like, oh, here's some mindset stuff, here's some emails. Oh, like actual hard math of doing this. So if you're new, welcome in. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button if you want to see videos like this every single week. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. It's always great to have you. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to be showing you guys the feedback that I look at as a coach to help my players, be as successful as possible. So I've got this first sheet up here. I've got all the names scooted off just for the sake of privacy. Some of my students, they don't want to have their name everywhere showing what they're working on. But I still want to be able to show you guys the data of just like what I look at as a coach in order to make decisions and help myself understand like where are my players at, how am I doing as a coach, and what does each player need to do specifically as far as accomplishing their goals, because there's a lot of stuff that I can say, hey, players should do this or that or the other thing, and that's all well and good, but if we don't have the high level stuff of here's where we're trying to get to and here's where we're at right now, and like here's whether or not that's probable based on our current pace, it doesn't matter what I tell you to do. If I tell you the perfect drill to do, but I know that it's going to take you 4 years to accomplish, and reach your goal, and you only have 2 to accomplish that. It's like, that's the wrong target. I need to have a different conversation with you. Either I need to give you a different drill, I need to give you different feedback, or I need to tell you, just be like, hey, like your goals are not realistic here. And so we need to recalibrate. And for me, helping players play Division One golf, like that's what I'm talking to them about. And so if we're in a situation where I look at a player and say, hey, this isn't going to happen, I'm not going to take them on as a player. I'm not going to take them on as a student, because I'm looking at that and saying, well, all the things that I'm going to coach around are going to be optimized around that particular goal. And so there's a lot of coaches out there who can coach on all sorts of stuff. They'll work with players at any skill level, whether they're just beginning golf and they're 6 years old, or they're a senior and they're 70 or 80 years old trying to hit a golf ball, and everything in between. That's not me. My thing is playing Division One golf, and so it's very important for me that I have feedback on every single player to see where they're at. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. So this first page that I've got pulled up here is how I really track my students. So on this little left-hand column here, you've got the starting scoring differential. So when I start working with the player, where they're at, the current scoring differential, the amount of improvement that player has had, the monthly improvement, and the annual improvement. That way I can just kind of have a perspective of like over year, where we're going to end up getting to. And I also kind of have in here, where their class is, so that I kind of have a perspective of like, okay, cool. How much time do we have for this player? And then my head's kind of hiding it, but we also have how many months ago they had signed up for the program, because that also is going to dictate, what this number ends up doing over here. But anyway, I have all that, and then it kind of becomes my mean and median averages, so I can have a perspective when I'm working with a player to say like, okay, like what's realistic? Like if we just kind of were average, a lot of time parents are concerned about like, oh well, I don't know if my kid's going to do the thing perfectly, and it's just like, yeah, no one does the thing perfectly, but it's if I can just say like I present this information to players and I coach them this often and I do these things and they get these results on average, then I can say, all right, cool. If I could up the compliance as a coach, maybe I can make it easier for them, then those numbers will rise. But I can just say as like a blanket average and be like, this is kind of what I expect a player to end up accomplishing. One of the things you might be noticing is there's a lot of blank spots here. That's because we've had a lot of recent signups through the winter months. And we just haven't really had any tournament data coming in here to really be able to update this stuff. So I'm excited to see where that stuff goes. And it kind of is a great segue into saying like, for me, this is my number one feedback, loop here, because I can see for a player, okay, we started working here and now you're here, if it's a big jump and it's a big improvement, that I can say like, all right, cool. That stuff we were doing, it was working, it's the right things to tell you. If I have some of these players where let's say, they either struggle or they get worse, yeah, it kind of sucks. But it's also great feedback for me as a coach to say, all right, cool, I need to double down with these players specifically. These ones are fine. These players over here, they're crushing it. They understand it. But these players here, they need a little bit more attention. And we need to potentially tweak their stuff. And this alone is not enough. So I want to show you guys all the dashboards that I'm really looking at as a coach to be able to help a player do this. So number one, junior golf scoreboard. I've just got an example of Moses here because he's been crushing it since we started working together back in like July. And I mean, he's been doing an awesome job. He's got some crazy stuff going on, but just fantastic job. So anyway, let's kind of look at this and kind of consider things. So, I want to see where the scoring average is at, right? So that's kind of trended down over time, which is definitely positive. Just kind of jump over here. We started working together. Yeah, it was back in July here. He was at 77.3. So now we're down to 76.5. So I guess that's not a shot. His scoring differential has come down by almost 2.5 shots over a pretty short period of time. So that's great to see. Not sure why the 71's not reporting yet, but I'm sure it will eventually. But that's kind of like where we're at here. So I have this as kind of a good measurement here. I can also see that the tracking here. I can see the overall progress. So back again, and what was it, July 18.5. Now we're at 5.53. So big improvement. And I can also see the percentile. You went from 40th percentile to 29th percentile. That's fantastic. But once again, I can get the feedback on where he's at as a player. Because if you didn't have this, you might look at something like, oh, well, he was ranked 257 and now he's ranked 260. If you didn't have this, you'd be like, oh my gosh, we have to like win tournaments or we have to beat other kids. And it's like, no, he's actually improving really, really fast. He's improving at a rate of like, let's see where, his numbers are out here. He's improving by like almost 4 shots a year. And that's with, I guess you guys see my note, broke his leg. That's crazy. But this is one of the feedback tools that I like to use. This is something any coach can do, but most coaches don't. To be fair, most coaches do not go through this because it's kind of a pain, especially if you don't have things set up for it. So this is the number one thing. If you're a parent, definitely be looking at this. Next one I've got is stats. I want to be able to see player stats. I want to see every round that they play. So in this case, I can see for him, we had this 82. Not the best. Another 82. Again, not the best. To be fair, he's getting his legs back. Pun not intended there. But then we got a 71 here. So, one of the things Moses has learned a lot of is being able to learn how to look at this data and look at some of the other statistics that I'm not going to be able to go over in this video to understand what he needs to do in order to improve and play better. To make his game very, very simple so that he understands, okay, I did that in this last round. I made those mistakes. I need to double down on that because I'm getting a little bit sloppy there. So that's huge. So if you guys aren't already tracking your stats, I really recommend it. Draw More Circles is my favorite. If you guys are looking for one, definitely try them out. I know they've got a free trial. I give my students a discount for it. But if you want to pay full price, then, I highly recommend it. Decade's pretty good. I've got, obviously I prefer Circles, but Decade's another good one. But continuing on here, another place that I like to go to, another dashboard that I like to reference is, this is something I created for all my students. But you can pretty much do basic math, if you got the legwork to do this. But I like to see penalty rate, greens and regulation, scrambling, 3 putts, and birdie conversion rate, because I can see your scoring average, your scoring differential. But in order to really be able to bring scores, I can see what your scores are shooting. But if I want to really bring down scores, I need to figure out what are these averages here, and how are they moving? How do they interact with each other? Because for example, if we've got a lot of penalties off the tee, I don't need to say, look at the scores and be like, why are the scores high? I can be like, hey, dude, why are we hitting balls out of bounds? And then not just that, we can start to dig into what's happening here. With one student I'm working with, he had a situation where he was being very aggressive. And that wasn't punishing him in the past because he was going through a stretch where he was being able to drive the ball pretty straight. And he was playing golf courses that were fairly wide open. And so he could use his driver as a weapon. He was able to hit it very far. And he was able to use that to some degree artificially push his scores down. But if we didn't have the perspective for him in his game to say, this is a little bit of an issue, this is really causing us some problems, then we would just be running around being like, oh, we have to do this, let's look at the golf swing. When in reality, it was as simple a situation as just like, hey, I need you to be a little bit more conservative off the tee, and we need to do a little bit of legwork as far as mapping out a golf course ahead of time to make sure that we're hitting driver into windows that make sense. So, that's just a very high level, perspective. And again, these things get more detailed for, a student that I'm working with specifically. But, the point of these videos is really help you guys understand the high level stuff. You guys want direct feedback. You want me to just do all this stuff for your child and tell them exactly what they need to do, the drills, the strategy changes, all that stuff. There'll be a link below this video where you can fill out an application to learn more about that. And there's also another video or a link below where I'll be doing, I do a monthly webinar. So if you're interested in learning more about this process in more detail, then you can go ahead and opt in for that as well. Continuing on though, all these numbers go together to produce what a player should shoot. And when I say should shoot, it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's going to get us pretty dang close. If we understand how many shots we're losing off the tee, if we understand how many greens we're hitting, if we understand how often do we make bogey or par when we miss the green, we understand how many times we make bogey on the green, three putting, and we understand how many times we make birdie when we hit the green, then we can really manipulate these numbers and say, like, what if I got my greens regulation higher? What if I got my three putting down? What if I got my birdie conversion rate up? And what do I need to do ultimately to be in a position where my scores make sense? For a Division I player, I'm going to want to see scores between 72 and 74 on average. And so we can literally just say, like, okay, cool. Like, what do we need to do? In this case, just to kind of show you guys how dynamic this is. These are kind of numbers that I'd say are kind of where I would typically see a Division I caliber player. Let's just, that's usually what I'm going to see. We got it close to 70% greens regulation, maybe 40% scrambling. Could be a little bit better. Could be a little bit worse, to be fair. Three putting, maybe just under 5%, once around. Maybe it's a little bit worse. Maybe it's a little bit better. Again, I said 72 to 74. This is right smack dab in the middle of that, about a 20% birdie conversion rate. And all we want to be able to do is be able to say, okay, well, we're here today, and what's going to impact our scores the most, and then just systematically do that week over week, month over month, year over year, until we've accomplished whatever our goal is, right? Which is to shoot lower scores and be in a position where we can be successful. So that's the next big tracking and feedback perspective, is because we're not just going out there and playing rounds. We're not just looking at our scoring average or scoring differential, where we're ranked in our class. We're actually looking at, okay, what are the specific skills and how are they trending compared to what our scores are, and then where we need to focus as a result of that. And then we break it all the way down into practice. What are the things that we're going to need to do? And so we want to be able to say, okay, what's the biggest priority? In this case, when we were initially talking about this stuff, three putts was a huge one. I think it still is, to be fair. But par 5 was another big one. And there's not as much meat on that bone, but it was very easy to implement very, very quickly. And as a result of that, that was a big part of his initial scores dropping off. We're going to have feedback here. We can say, okay, cool. Scores have come down. Scoring differentials come down. Three putts did come down a little bit. Greens regulation dropped off a little bit, but that was because he started playing longer golf courses, right? So it's not he was a worse golfer or he got worse. It was actually he just started, challenging himself a little bit more, which is why his scoring differential went down more than his scoring average did. But the fact that we were able to lengthen out the golf courses and have scoring average go down at the same time is massive as far as overall progress. And again, this gives us the perspective over here on what is our scoring average going to be. But then we also have the tournament selection, which I haven't even talked about in this video. There's plenty of other videos on YouTube from me on tournaments if you guys want to go watch those, that also just bring the scoring average down by making these courses harder. Again, you guys can see back here around this time last year, we're playing easier golf courses. Around post working together, now we start playing harder golf courses. You can see that in the course rating. But anyway, hopefully you guys can understand here how much easier it is to help a player accomplish their goals if you have all this data in front of you and you know how to parse it out. You can say, okay, cool. We're class of whatever this is, class of 2029. So it's 2025 right now. We got 4 years, roughly, probably 3. And we know that the average player, just looking at this data right here, let's just be conservative and say it's 3.3. Well, if we improve by 9.9 shots, over the next 3 years, we're going to be a scoring differential like -4. That opens up a lot of options. And just to be super clear on this, you go to rankings and honors college signings, and ranking. What do we get at -4 scoring differential? We're one of the best players in the country, and we got programs like Arizona State recruiting, at that level. We got Princeton recruiting at that level. We got Indiana, Michigan, Florida State, UCLA. Like, these are very good programs, and it could even get better than that. It's like, again, that's just saying if we performed at average. If we performed a little bit below average, we're still playing Division I golf. So in Moses' case, I can be very confident for him to say, okay, cool. Based on all these metrics, not only are we moving in the right direction, but we're also going to know if we hit a plateau or if we get stuck, we're going to know exactly which skill is holding us back. we're going to know exactly where we need to focus in order to bring that improvement. So hopefully this all makes sense to you guys. Hopefully this gives you a different perspective on the thinking of playing Division One golf. Don't get swayed by those people who are like, oh, just social media, just work hard, just send out emails. Like, no, like you should be able to mathematically quantify what you need to do, and then at least gets you over the targets. And then there's a certain level of expertise in knowing exactly what to do to bring each one of those numbers down. And like I said, that's what I do with all my students. If that's something you're interested in, either fill out the application or register for the webinar that I'll be doing. I do one of them. We're planning on doing once a month. It's just an opportunity to learn this stuff in more detail. I also take questions on the webinar. So it's limited spots for that because it is live interactive. But if you're interested in either one of those, just go ahead and fill out those links below. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, helps push it out to more people in the algorithm. And I'll see you guys in the next one.